Hey Chris, how you doing today?
Hi, Ron. Doing great. Looking forward to diving into part two here.
Yeah, part two. So, for a reminder for the audience, part one, we're talking about B2B companies and how they move into the digital transformation and how that's difficult. And there are so many different things, more so than just spinning up an online storefront, which many of them do, and then wondering why they haven't successfully made the change. So, on the first one, we talked about, and I'll just very briefly cover the topic so you can go back and view part one if you missed it. We talked about AI, SEO, invoicing, integration, automation, UI, UX, order history, roles, quotes, and product configuration. So that was covered in part one. Today, we've got another nine or so topics that we're going to kick off. So we kind of had them in a rapid fire succession. We talked originally about Connie. I'll bring it back up here again to remind those who didn't do it. Connie is continuous and never ending innovation, right? And we talked about briefly how, Blockbuster went out of business because they didn't innovate, whereas Netflix started by sending DVDs to your house, but by continuously innovating, they realized that business was growing old and they moved into streaming, and look how big they are today, right? And that's what companies need to think about. They need to think about continuously innovating and growing with the times. They may have been in a family business that's done business this way for 100 years, but your buyers and purchasers that have been buying from you for the last 30 years are going to retire, and the new generation is going to come up and they're not going to want to buy in 30-year-old technology or in the ways that happened 30 years ago. They're going to expect a much higher standard, a much more digital world, which is what they grew up in. So this series is to try to help you consider all the different thoughts and ideas of how to take your B2B business and move into that digital transformation. So the format was I'm going to quick fire some topics here for Chris, and then Chris and I can deep dive into those. All right. So the first one is tiered pricing. Sometimes we call it MTP for multi-tiered pricing. Sometimes we call it CSP for customer specific pricing. Same animal, two different acronyms. So multi-tiered pricing, go.
The biggest thing here is keeping it up to date and making it customer specific if you do have customer specific pricing. So typically integrating with an ERP or accounting software or CRM where that is the source of truth. And then we're keeping it updated on the site at all times, or vice versa. The site is sort of pumping into other systems so that you only have to update it in one place. The other thing is, does your platform enable what you need? Over a decade of implementing this and using it on literally dozens and dozens of different sites that are in production now, ultimately there have been challenges that we've worked through to accomplish very unique and specific capabilities here that sort of represent every ERP that's in the top 20 most popular ERPs on the face of the planet. We have all of their pricing tiers, customer specific, different types of flexible business logic where you don't have to specify everything. You can specify segments that get certain pricing, different rules and logic that apply based on customer groups, and et cetera. Quantity price breaks that are similar. This also can pair with discounts and coupons, or at least need to be aware of and respect the rules of discounts and coupons, or vice versa. So that's also something to keep in mind. Any other thoughts on your end, Ron?
Yeah, I think that very last thing you mentioned there, I mean, multi-tiered pricing can be as simple as we've got retail pricing, wholesale, distributor, and reseller, right? We've only got a couple tiers, but then customer specific pricing. And then when you overlap that with the quantity price breaks, it can get really complex. And I've got a really nice video on our YouTube channel that walks through it and shows our model and how we handle that. But the last thing that you mentioned there, overlapping that with combining that with discounts and restrictions and promos, is a very interesting topic because, if you're already giving a wholesaler 25% off and you're only making 8% margin on them, and then they turn around and try to apply a 20% off coupon off 1,000 units, is that something that's allowed? Because most platforms have restrictions and combinable restrictions and things like that within the discounts and promos, but they don't necessarily marry that with the tiered pricing. And so the next thing you know, you can end up in the hole quite drastically on things. So you want to be able to talk to your vendor about their platform to see that that's something that they can address, something we certainly have. All right, next topic is custom workflows. I know this is a nebulous, huge, vague one, right? Because there could be custom workflows for basically everything. So if you want to break it into a few categories, you're welcome to. But let's talk briefly about, and whether you want to talk about our platform or all platforms in general. But, the basic crux is every B2B business is different. And our platform, and one of the things that I profess when I talk to my clients is, look, I'm not trying to tell you how your business has to morph to adapt and work within the confines of my application. My application is extensible and modularly written such that it can adapt and grow with your business. It can
Right.
also adapt and grow ahead of your business to help drive business and take you into that next generation of workflow, of business, of intelligence, of AI, whatever it is, right? We want the
Right.
platform to help push your business to grow. So, custom workflows, what do you got?
I would say the first thing here is, like you said, it's a framework. And what's beautiful about frameworks is you can modularly sort of take chunks, and then you can really sort of like you would with Legos, like get higher and higher fidelity with the different pieces that you use where. And that modularity is really important. Um, there ultimately needs to be the capability to make custom workflows without breaking the ability to upgrade as well. And so
Right.
that's a really important, just general architectural thought. Um, with that in mind, though, what kind of examples are pretty standard? Well, one example that we see a lot of is different customers have different experiences for how they handle things like returns, dealing with RMAs. This is a really sensitive topic because if somebody receives the wrong item, or it's defective, or there's something wrong with their order for whatever reason, maybe they got too many of them. How are they supposed to deal with that in a way that's self-service and that isn't frustrating for them? And this is probably one of the biggest breaking points for people when they deal with a online experience, is trying to interact with customer service in as low a profile way as possible, ideally in an automated way, so that they're getting what they need and they don't have to talk to anyone. They can do it at their leisure, at their preferred time, and it just works. The other part of this sort of custom workflow might be that we may be dealing with large equipment. It's probably not going to be super straightforward to just send them a label that they can take to the UPS store if it's a large piece of equipment. We're going to have to schedule possibly an LTL pickup, and there may be fees that they're going to be responsible for depending on the type of RMA or return. So we may want
Right.
to get a CSR in touch with them just to make sure they understand why there's a fee, because they didn't, effectively, if they didn't pay attention and order the right item, then they may have to be responsible for that. So we may need to get a CSR involved and be part of that workflow. Um, and another example, there may be items that are sold in a marketplace. You're the marketplace, but one of your sellers sells something incorrectly. And so there may need to be a custom workflow where there's chat, where there's a discussion, and it may even need to be moderated, where your administrative or customer service team makes sure that the sellers are doing the right thing. Um, Another example would be possibly dealing with drop shipping or multiple locations. And, ultimately the question is, how does your business work and what workflow makes sense for your customer, especially so that it's self-service. And I think at the end of the day, when you think about custom workflows, they also need to be able to fit into the model of managing the customer's expectations and being seamless within your organization. And to the extent that we can do those two things and make it as self-service for both sides as possible, and really manage the customer's expectations properly, keep them apprised, and then internally have whatever we're doing fit within the workflow so that we're not changing the business can just keep scaling and getting more efficient, but not having to do, odd, unique steps in the process to accommodate something, the more that it's just going to work seamlessly. And that's what the software needs to support. So, and that's what we think of when we're saying custom workflows is, again, like you said, Ron, taking this framework of Lego blocks, customizing it in a way that still enables upgrades, but allows you to get a specific experience and a self-service capability and an expectation management and automation and integration that's seamless while still having a custom process. This also tends to apply to other things like customers having purchase levels where they have to get approval. This is something that can apply to certain businesses. They may have multiple locations where they want to enable purchasing, purchaser, or possibly like a branch manager who can purchase up to a certain point. They have to get approval from corporate after that. And then similarly, maybe different product restrictions. This could be based on, jurisdiction-based laws. So like different states may require that items of a certain type get a prescription before they're sold. And then, similarly, there could be just a sort of decision that these certain product types can't be sold to our competitor. They can't be sold to a company before they go through training on how to use it. It just kind of depends on your business and how you want that to work. So those are a few examples, and I'm sure, Ron, it would probably be helpful for our audience if you chimed in on a few of those as well.
Yeah, thanks. So one of the things that ends up happening with these B2B clients that we work with is we're so focused on, Chris mentioned self-service a couple of times, right? We're so focused on the customer journey and making it easier for them that we forget about protecting the business. And multi-tiered pricing and approvals is one of those ones that can really bite us. So in order to protect the business and serve the client, we have to think through the different scenarios. So for example, let's say Chris was talking about, and it gets really big when you start talking about LTL shipping and large equipment, right? Because, a piece of equipment may cost whatever, make up a number, 50 grand, but it may cost $6,000 to have it shipped. Well, what happens when you sell that and you give a 20% discount if they buy 10 or more and they only need 7? What are they going to do? Well, they're going to buy 10 and then they're going to turn around after they buy the 10 and say that 2 of them were defective or something like that during shipment, and then they're going to want to ship it back. Well, theoretically, then they're still only getting the 8 or they're only getting 7 and they don't qualify for the discount. So you're going to just automate that return process and let them return it. But you might want to think about, is there a restocking fee? Is there an inspection done so you can find out if it really is defective or not? If it's not defective, then their price goes up to the original less than 10 quantity, things like that, right? So there are some things that can really hurt the business financially when you're thinking about automating returns and automating these discounts. So that's just one thing you want to think about. The last one Chris just mentioned kind of takes us into the next topic. He talked about product restrictions. Product restrictions would mean that it could either be regionally restricted, right? There's an embargo on Sudan, so we don't allow that product to be sold in the Sudan. That would be one type of restriction. But it could be different. Like we've got one client right now, they service all of the uniforms, the branded and embroidered uniforms for Coca-Cola and Chick-fil-A. So when Coca-Cola logs in, they don't want to see, and they don't want any of their employees to see any piece of clothing, any piece of anything that is not the right color, not the right standard, not already pre-approved, and doesn't already have the right either white or light color versus dark. If they order a light gray sweatshirt, then it's going to be embroidered the red. But if they order a red sweatshirt, it's going to go white, right? So one of the things that we have is what we call multi-branded stores. So there's a concept of multi-store, which is like Amazon, right? There's multiple sellers. They each have their own store, but it's in one marketplace. But for B2B, it's more common to see what we call multi-branded stores. So in this case, for this client, they actually have a subdomain Coca-Cola dot customer name. And when all of the employees log in there, then it's branded for Coca-Cola. Only the products that are already approved for purchase by Coca-Cola employees are there. The light and dark logos and the style guides, they're already in. They can't upload or anything. They just pick a piece of clothing and everything is already spec'd out according to the guidelines of the company, right? Same thing when Chick-fil-A logs in, it's all branded for them and it's all their uniforms and it's all their information. And it's really easy to then, one of the other things Chris just talked about, and I'll let you expand on this, Chris, then it's really easy to apply okay, all employees have a purchase limit of $100. So any employee can go up and order on account uniforms or swag or whatever they need up to $100. Anything from 100 to 500 goes to their manager. Anything over 500 goes to the district or, whatever approver, whatever that looks like. So anyway, I wanted to introduce the concept of multi-branded stores and then kind of turn it over to you and let you kind of deep dive into that one.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic. And it really gets to the core of having a platform that really has a lot of options that we've experienced the need for in different environments. So we've seen a benefit to this with companies that do drop shipping, and the actual purchaser or seller of the item might be like an optometrist office, and they need to have a sort of store within a store to be able to allow their customers to order contact lenses or get a renewal of a contact lens, frames for their glasses. And so having a multi-branded type of scenario works really well. This optometrist office can brand it as their own, and they can take advantage of whatever discount applies to them at the volume that they're purchasing. And then, like you said, we also have worked with a lot of companies that have multiple locations, and they may have new staff that when the new staff joins the company, they get allotted $250 or $500 to purchase different gear. They may have really specific clothing that they have to purchase for a medical environment, like scrubs that need to be branded for that hospital, for example. And so they have the indicator that shows how much they have in their cart and how much they have within their approved budget to spend. We can even do creative things like showing that they have to at least have a certain number of items of a certain type, and even show recommendations of the most commonly purchased so that they kind of get that interaction on the site. The other thing with the sort of multi-branded sites that's really important is being able to allow the user to really control as much as possible that you want them to be able to control, and make it so that they can embed the site, if you want that to be an option, into their marketing. Because a lot of the beauty of marketplaces and buying groups and just generally being able to do things where you're taking advantage of multi-branding is you can enable your customer to be your marketing and sales engine for a lot of your transactions. And so this can be really powerful if you enable them through your site to embed things, to share things, and make it easy for them to incorporate their marketing strategy, sort of infuse it with your content from your site that's branded for them. So this can be, again, sort of a exponential increase in your results from a marketing perspective. And that kind of leads into our last topic today, which is the analytics. And I would love for you to open that up, Ron, as well, so folks can get an idea of why this can be so important to make the right decisions, to feedback loop into the site, and over to you for that.
Yeah, I'm going to mention one thing because I definitely would love to show a screenshot or two real quick to close out that last one. We've got a couple different ones, and they happen to be medical. One is a manufacturing company that manufactures, they're kind of a pharmacy, and instead of just trying to say, we're CVS.com competitor when they came to us, we came up with them with a marketing strategy. And so they've got 4 different pharmacies. One is for him, one is for her, right? So they can really focus, like for him is going to be ED and hair loss. For her is going to be whatever, hair loss and skincare. And then they have a skincare one, and then they have a pain management one. So it really allows them from an SEO perspective, a pay-per-click, a branding perspective to really focus on the marketing need. Another one we just launched for another company, and I'll pop up them side by side here. They're a medical company, and one sells to all medical personnel, and then the other one focuses just on EMS. So everything for paramedics and specific for those that are on the car ordering those products. And so they may carry 10,000 products, but on the ambulance, they only carry 420 products. And so the EMS site only has those 420 products very specifically targeted towards the EMS. And so the multi-branded store isn't just around access, it's also around marketing and targeted marketing, which, as you said, kind of really pulls us into the next one. And the next one is the advanced analytics, right? And why we even care about analytics. Historically, for the last 25 years, it's been Google Analytics. We make sure to put Google Analytics on every one of our sites, right? And that at least tells us how many people come, how long they stay, how many exited, what's the bounce rate. But what it doesn't say is it doesn't do the interpage, the inner page engagement. How many people spent more than 3 minutes on this page but didn't add it to the cart? How many people put it in the cart but abandoned it? How many people watched a video? How many people hovered and zoomed in on the images? How many people filled out a form? How far down the form did they get before they bailed on the form? All the stuff that interacts within the page, really where we call the advanced analytics, right? And Google has some advanced analytics. Clarity has our own analytics and machine learning module, because we want to do, people like to call it BI, right? Business intelligence. We want to react to what people are doing. Now, the more we can automate that, the better, right? So for the last 10 years, it's been a big discussion about BI, right? Let's gather as much information as we can. Let's generate as many reports as we can. Then we'll sit down as a management team. We'll try to slice and dice all the data and figure out what's the smart thing to do. But AI and machine learning has completely changed the game, right? And I'm going to have you deep dive into that. I'm going to give one quick example and then let you really dive into how do we take all of these analytics, which now we're really good about collecting, how do we turn that into intelligent data to make business sense so we can act on it? So let me give just a quick example, and then you talk about how that could be potentially possible. So Ron goes and doesn't log in, doesn't create an account, but he goes and browses homedepot.com. I browse 9 hand tools and 1 power tool, and then I leave. And then 3 weeks later, I come back to the site, and all of a sudden, 10% off all hand tools pops up, right? Yes. That is a reality that can be done. It's personalized the experience, and it knows that Ron viewed 90% hand tools and didn't buy. And so now they're going to try to incent to get me off my butt and buy a hand tool, right? And they know my propensity of browsing are hand tools, right? So those are things that can happen that can help increase sales, increase conversions, but you need machine learning, you need AI to be able to do so. So I want to turn it over to you and let you kind of really dive in technically into how, now that we can gather all the analytics, how do we make that actionable?
Yeah, and I think this, Ron, is a really compelling topic for a lot of people. And it's essentially, like you said, a requirement going forward. And, just to keep it really high level and simple, one of the biggest things that we see here as the opportunity is very clean, and like you said, very focused on that individual content. So calls to action that are really relevant to that particular user that get infused into the content that they're browsing. Intelligence that just makes the site intuitive, where we're showing them browsing history. People who have browsed for this item have also purchased this item. Here are the related items or accessories that would be applicable. And then essentially making it so that the site is learning from every interaction that occurs. So what this means is that the actual inputs are training the search algorithm and the AI cumulatively over time. Now, again, sort of the outputs generally should be calls to action that are just more intelligent so that the user can find what they need. And some of this is about sort of meeting them where they are at in the funnel. A lot of folks that are visiting your site may not be ready to purchase, but they want to become a part of your community and understand sort of more about your offering and sort of the problems and how to approach solving those problems in your space. And so this can be an opportunity to take advantage of advanced analytics to sort of get more people interacting with your site and taking the next step without necessarily purchasing, but being in a queue to then purchase when they're ready. And then adapting so that whenever someone is ready to purchase, we're not showing them top of the funnel calls to action. We're showing them bottom line and possibly, like you said, Ron, like coupons and discounts that are very motivating to them to take action now. And so these are the types of things that you can do with advanced analytics that you're really not going to be able to do with global data in and of itself. You need individual transactional data for that user, and then be able to tie that back to global data or subsets of global data, and have those interrelate to each other. And so the mechanics behind it, I think, can get kind of detailed, but the specific output would be that your user has a adapted experience based on where they're at in the funnel and what they're focusing on your site. Especially if your site has a lot of content, and a lot of different areas and ways to get to that piece that they need. We really need to think about guiding them to that content and using the analytics to sort of show us a measurement of our success or failure, to be able to guide them rapidly so that we're sort of shoring up, pieces of the funnel where we're leaking, and things aren't going well for the user. So that's really where the advanced analytic applies as an output. And as always, a lot of these topics we can go into more detail. We really hope this gets you thinking about some of these key aspects for your site. And one of the big takeaways that we would like for you to have from all of our videos is that our team is always happy to provide more content. If you provide comments below, we'll be happy to go into those areas. And we also offer a complimentary discovery, that is what we like to call a no sales process. We're just trying to help find you the right fit for your scenario. So you're welcome to reach out to us if you would like to engage in that. Ron, I'll turn it over to you if you have anything else to wrap us up here.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, we'd love to talk with you about your project. Like Chris said, no pressure, free consultation. Hit us up on our website, clarity-ventures.com. Put in, get a quote. You'll jump on a call with me. Would love to talk to you about your project. And if we can help, we'd love to. Otherwise, smash the like button, leave us a comment, and thanks for joining. Bye for now.
Bye for now.